Chapter 34. Victor opened his eyes and gasped for breath. He found himself lying down on a cold metal surface. It was mostly dark around him, but there were small white lights in various places. He turned his head to get a better look at the ground. It was smooth, cold, and dry. He slowly got to his knees to see if the rest of his body worked. With as much pain as he had endured, he was afraid that he might be injured, but his limbs supported him without pain. He stood up gradually, hoping to avoid dizziness. As he got to his feet, his cloak began to glow slightly. To his surprise, he still had the 10 divine keys. He turned around to more carefully examine his surroundings. He realized that the small white lights in various places were stars. He was standing on some metal platform in space. He inhaled deeply and realized that there seemed to be plenty of cool air around him in spite of his apparent surroundings. He spun around and caught a glimpse of a figure seated on a simple chair. Victor squinted his eyes to try and gather the details about the person there with him. It was a woman with long, straight, golden hair. He cautiously approached. In the low light, he was able to perceive that she wore a simple white dress with fabric that went from her neck to her ankles. It fit her slender form without being overly tight. "Jennifer?" gasped Victor. "No," said the woman. Victor stopped. He tried to draw on his power of perception to discern her identity. As his powers revealed the shape of her cheeks and her chin, he raised an eyebrow in confusion. She looked very much like Jennifer, but he could tell it was someone else. "Who are you, then?" asked Victor cautiously. "I am the Herald of Time," replied the woman. "The Herald of Time?" asked Victor. "Yes," she said in a cool voice, "and you have made a mess, one that I will have to clean up." Victor frowned. "I cleaned up a mess," said Victor in confusion. "Right," said the Herald of Time, "because completely diverting the timeline from the natural course more than 1,000 years back cannot possibly have any negative repercussions." Though her voice was calm, her sarcasm was cutting. "The natural course for the Earth was to have the archdemon invade and enslave humanity?" asked Victor defensively. "Oh yes, for the Earth," said the woman, "because time only applies to a single world. The rest of the universe is inconsequential, especially because time does not exist anywhere but Earth." "So you're saying there are negative consequences elsewhere?" asked Victor. "You are asking a question as though you are entitled to an answer," reprimanded the Herald of Time. "Let me assure you, I am not here to explain every aspect of every consequence of your very short-sighted act." "Short-sighted?" gasped Victor. "Do you know how long my actions have been planned? Do you know how much thought has been put into stopping the archdemon? Do you know the sacrifices that have been made to save humanity?" "Yes, it was short-sighted," said the Herald. "Yes, I do know how long your actions were planned. Yes, I do know how much thought has been put into stopping the archdemon. And yes, I do know that you and your friends have made sacrifices to do what you thought was saving humanity. I'm going to have to undo everything you did." "Thought was saving humanity?" asked Victor cautiously. "You were not even aware that the one you call archdemon was human," explained the Herald. "But he was a monster," said Victor. "Perhaps you were referring to his appearance," said the Herald. "But were you aware that there are many humans that have horns and fangs in other parts of the universe? Does the possession of an appearance that is diverse from your own earn someone the title of monster?" "What?" exclaimed Victor. "Or perhaps you were referring to his propensity for killing others to strengthen himself," said the Herald. She continued as though Victor had not responded to her previous point. "Of course that places you on moral high ground, since you did not kill him to strengthen yourself. Oh wait, you did." "No, I didn't," exclaimed Victor. "Or perhaps he was a monster because he did not originate on your planet," continued the Herald. "Please continue to tell me how your actions were justified." "I had to stop him to spare the lives of billions of others that he intended to take," said Victor angrily. "Lives that would have expired in a short amount of time anyway," said the Herald. "He intended to hold them as slaves," objected Victor. "He intended to make them suffer while he lived in pleasure, as opposed to the other tyrants that humans from Earth would have produced, which also would have made them slaves that suffered to gain personal pleasure," responded the Herald. "I didn't think you got a say," said Victor. "I thought the 10th divine key was supposed to seal my change." "Incorrect," said the Herald of Time. "It grants you an audience with me. I represent the interests of time, and I must cause your changes to be absorbed into the flow of time." "You aren't very fond of humans, are you?" asked Victor. "You aren't very perceptive, are you?" asked the Herald. "But to answer your question, no, I am not very fond of your kind. You spend your short lives trying to put one another down and build yourselves up. Humans rarely cooperate with one another, and when they do, it is frequently only to overpower another group of humans. Brothers betray brothers. Nations fight nations. Husbands abuse their wives, and wives berate and belittle their husbands. Children hate their parents, and parents neglect their children. I cannot deny that you took bold action to redeem mankind. Unfortunately, defeating a demon from the stars does nothing to defeat the demons that dwell in each and every one of you." Victor did not know what to say. He blinked his eyes, hoping that an answer would come. Her assessment of humanity had not differed much from his when he struggled against the augments in his time. The cruelty of humans had robbed him of his parents. He recalled the pain that he had felt when they learned that their friend Daniel Young had been the very demon that they had wanted to stop. He recalled the horrors that Zeta-28 had inflicted on victims of her experiments. He recalled the hatred that he had seen in the eyes of Sarah Hawkins, David Sawyer, William Fine, Catherine Page, and Felix Light, as they butchered even their own acolytes to augment their own power. He looked up and saw the Herald's golden hair. He was instantly reminded of Jennifer Cedar. Suddenly, time seemed to slow down as she turned away from him. Her long hair seemed to float as it tossed from one side of her back to the other. "Origins," whispered a small voice in his mind. He looked down and noticed a subtle glow in the key of Origins. He touched it and suddenly found himself in a large white garden where he saw two figures in white robes. He approached them cautiously. At first he thought he was seeing himself having a conversation with Jennifer, but he quickly realized that it was actually Michael having a conversation with the Herald of Time. Tears were rolling down her cheeks as Michael embraced her. Victor tried to hear what they were saying, but Michael kissed her and then walked away. "Michael, I don't want you to die," she called out to him. He continued walking away from her without turning back. "I have to, Rachel," Michael called back. "They can be saved, and until they are, I will not have peace." His vision ended, and he again found himself on the platform with the Herald of Time. "Certainly humans are far from perfect," admitted Victor in a low voice. The Herald of Time raised an eyebrow in surprise. "But that does not mean they are all bad. My parents gave their lives to protect me." "And you went on to kill many more," said the Herald of Time as she turned back to Victor. "True," said Victor, "but what Sig, Kirana, Jonathan, Lucas, and I tried to do was to help people in pain. We risked our lives to help others, not because it gave us a reward. Can you say the same of Row 82, or the one you call Lizard?" asked the Herald of Time with air quotes. Before he could answer, Victor was pulled into another vision. He saw the Herald of Time in front of a man with a bright white robe and a long white beard. Tears were pouring down her face. "Do you understand?" asked the man. "No," said the herald. "I don't understand. How could he do that when it made no difference?" "No difference?" said the man in surprise. "I am the Herald of Time," she explained. "Humanity will nearly destroy itself, and before it does, the archdemon will devour what is left of it. Sacrificing himself was short-sighted. There was no one like Michael, and the universe is a darker place because he threw his life away." "Did he?" asked the man in surprise. "Your sarcasm isn't helping," she shouted. "Even I cannot undo what he has done." "That is true," said the man in a solemn tone. She waited, hoping that he would offer additional clarification. After a moment, she put her hands on her hips. "That's it?" she shouted. "What did you wish me to say?" asked the man. She furrowed her brow in anger, then spun around and stormed away. As the vision faded, Victor began to understand her perspective. She had been in love with Michael, and he had sacrificed himself to save humanity. She felt robbed, and she blamed humans for taking him away from her. Michael's last cryptic instruction to convince time suddenly made sense. He knew exactly what he needed to do. "At the end, yes," said Victor, answering the herald's question. "Row 82 and Lizard sacrificed to help others. But that's part of my point. Just because someone has made a mistake does not mean they cannot be saved. Just because humanity has flaws does not mean that it cannot or should not be redeemed." "You do not want everyone to be redeemed, though," said the Herald of Time. "You do not want your enemies revived. You do not want the demon lords to come back." There was a pause before Victor stood tall and answered. "Yes, I do," said Victor resolutely. The Herald of Time whirled around and looked at Victor. She tilted her head as she looked into his eyes, as though she were trying to see if he were lying. "But they killed your friends," said the Herald of Time in surprise. "That was the price that my friends were willing to pay," said Victor. "That was the price that I was willing to pay. We knew in the end that we were not given divine keys for our amusement. We were asked to sacrifice everything to save the world." "But here you are, still alive," countered the herald. "Do you not now long for the company of those that you lost? Was that not the point of your sacrifice? To attack time, to purchase for yourself a life of comfort with your friends? Do you not long for she who you loved to be with you?" "Of course I long for these things," said Victor. "But if me not having these things means that the billions of people who were denied family and happiness after the destroyer came can have a chance to have them, then that outweighs me getting what I want. Also, I did not come to attack time. I came to heal time." The Herald of Time raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Heal time?" asked the Herald of Time. "You cannot heal time. Time is not damaged." "You say that," said Victor, "but no one with your level of sarcasm and skepticism is undamaged." "And you are here to undo the damage?" asked the herald skeptically. "I am," said Victor. "I expected to die immediately, but I was spared." "What is your point?" asked the herald. "And not only was I spared, but all 10 of the divine keys are present with me," said Victor. "Yes, I can see that," said the herald. "Let me show you something," said Victor as he held up the soul key. In an instant, a blue hue appeared all around them. "You are going to read my mind?" asked the herald. "You will gain nothing new. I was honest with you." "I believe you. "You were honest," said Victor, "but this is so you can read my mind. Don't just observe events, observe motivations." Light swirled around them as the scene of a vision appeared to the two of them. Victor pointed out for the herald a younger version of himself as his parents prepared to sacrifice themselves to protect him. "I've seen this," said the herald coldly. "Yes, but you have not felt it," said Victor. The soul key and the key of origins both glowed brightly, and suddenly the herald gasped. "What are they doing?" she whispered in shock. She turned to Victor. "What are you doing to me?" "You have seen so many things that you have become hardened," said Victor. "You are not the first person that has become this way. It happened to many people in my time, seeing children used as slaves and beaten, starved, and abused, seeing augments and demon worshippers roam unchallenged. Not many people believed that the earth could be saved, or even that it was worth saving. But now, you have an opportunity, thanks to the soul key, to know the minds of those that did." "I do not like this sensation," said the herald. "Stop this." "I will in a moment," said Victor, "but I want you to focus on that feeling." There was a pause as they watched the eyes of Victor's parents while they clutched their son tightly in their arms. "What is this?" asked the herald as tears welled up in her eyes. "Many things," said Victor. "They are afraid for themselves and for their child. They are angry at those that threaten their home and family. They are frustrated that the others in the community did not listen to them and were unprepared for what happened. But mostly, the feeling is love." "They know what will happen," said the herald. "Yes," said Victor as he remembered how his parents had sacrificed themselves to purchase an opportunity for him to live. "I know what will happen too," said the herald. "Make this stop." After a few more moments, Victor nodded, and the vision changed. "Where are we?" asked the herald. "That is Abaddon," said Victor as he pointed to the dark demon below the cliff on which they stood. "He is going to try to kill one of you," said the herald. "Yes," said Victor. Erica Kingsley rushed in front of Stephanie Mason and took the lethal attack to save her. "She was not afraid," said the herald in surprise. "No, she wasn't," said Victor. "She also had love for all of you," whispered the herald. The vision changed. Victor and his friends were chained in Felix Light's prison. The alternate timeline version of Victor appeared and took down the acolytes in the room. "You were angry," said the herald, "but I thought you had wanted revenge." "A part of me did," said Victor. "But mostly you wanted to protect the others," said the herald in surprise. "My friends are precious to me," said Victor with a smile as they watched his alternate self disappear. The vision changed so that they could see Michael walking with Jennifer Cedar. The Herald of Time gasped. "Take me away from this," she demanded as though the sight were painful to her. "Just watch," said Victor as he took her hand to reassure her. She trembled slightly at his touch in spite of herself. She turned to see Jennifer ask Michael a question. "Why did you choose me?" asked Jennifer Cedar. "I can tell you're the kind of person who is strong," replied Michael. "You remind me of someone very dear to me." Tears ran down the cheeks of the Herald of Time as she heard the words and felt the old familiar love of the Archangel. "Strong?" said Jennifer in surprise. "I wasn't the one who defeated a demon." "No," laughed Michael, "but traveling through time is not the only ability I possess." "What else can you do?" asked Jennifer. "Well, I have the ability to see possible futures," said Michael. "Why didn't you trust me to see the future?" whispered the Herald of Time sadly. Though she knew there would be no response in her vision, Victor could tell the question was sincere. "Possible futures?" asked Jennifer. "So that's what you meant about saving the world. You're going to change time and stop the Earth from being pulled away from the sun." "Well, when you say it like that, it sounds so simple," said Michael with a smile. "It's more complicated?" asked Jennifer. "I'm afraid so," replied Michael. "It's not just a matter of changing something in the past. Time is bound by forces. It's like gravity." "Time is like gravity?" asked the Herald with surprise as she wiped her eyes. "That makes no sense, Michael." Victor smiled. "Time is like gravity?" asked Jennifer. Michael picked up a stone and threw it up into the air. A few moments later it fell on the ground. "You can try to move things away from its reach, but it pulls them back," replied Michael. "So we can't change the past?" asked Jennifer. "No, you can't," said the Herald. "Not really." "It might be possible," said Michael. "Imagine if instead of throwing a stone away, we threw the Earth." "What? Wouldn't that also be throwing the stone?" asked Jennifer. "Okay, the analogy is not perfect, but the idea is that with a tremendous amount of force, it might be possible to get gravity to pull everything a different direction," said Michael. "What would be strong enough to do that?" asked Jennifer. "I have a plan. It's a bit complicated," said Michael, "and I will need your help." "My help?" asked Jennifer. "What will I be able to do? I don't have flaming swords and time travel." "I am going to give you a part of me," said Michael, "and with it, you will gain the ability to time travel." "Wait, what?" asked Jennifer as she raised an eyebrow. "Your job will be to find others who are able to use my other abilities," said Michael, ignoring her question. "Eventually, you will find me again." He turned, and for a moment, it was as though he were looking right at the Herald of Time. She gasped and put her hand over her chest. "He knew," she whispered. "Of course he knew, and he loved you," said Victor. The Herald of Time watched in silence for a few moments. At length the vision disappeared, and the two of them found themselves on the cool metal surface in space. "You realize I cannot simply be persuaded to do what you want," said the Herald of Time softly, "even if I found your reasons persuasive. It is no small thing to change time out of its course. I only have power to bring the timeline to its natural path. To remove the archdemon, a master of sacrifice would have to forfeit their existence." "It just so happens that I have become a master of sacrifice," said Victor. "You would be willing to give up everything to save the Earth?" asked the Herald of Time as she turned to Victor. "Yes," said Victor calmly. "No one is here to see your sacrifice," said the Herald. "There is no reputation to save. There is no one that will sing your praises or honor if you do this." "I understand," said Victor calmly. "You will cease to exist in the new timeline," said the Herald. "You will be completely lost." "That's okay," said Victor. "You get nothing from this," said the Herald in clear, enunciated words. Victor smiled. "Of course I get something from this," said Victor. "What?" asked the Herald in confusion. "Peace," said Victor with a smile. The Herald paused for a moment as she considered what he said. Peace seemed so simplistic, yet it was the very thing that the Archangel Michael had told her he sought when he left to try to save humanity. It had seemed so wrong to her at the time. To her, humanity represented the opposite of peace, and yet here before her stood a human who sought the very same thing. He looked exactly as Michael had. She took a deep breath before responding. "You surprise me, Victor Lee," said the Herald as she wiped the tears from her face, "and that is difficult to do." "So you'll help me?" asked Victor. "It has been a long time since I have believed in nobility. But you are a noble soul, said the Herald of Time softly. I do not wish for you to die. I do not wish to die either, said Victor, but I must help the ones I love. The Herald of Time smiled softly. I understand, she whispered. Brace yourself. This will be unpleasant. After all, salvation is not a cheap experience. I am willing to pay the price, whispered Victor. Intense pain filled Victor's body. He began glowing brightly as he collapsed on the cool metal floor. He groaned as he felt his bones and flesh being torn apart by forces he could not comprehend. It was only a few more moments before everything went dark.